All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to KPACT. People are kind of just filing in here. All right. Just going to let everyone come in and then we will get started.
Let me actually see the video.
Okay. All right. It seems like that was a big group of everyone for now. There'll be people trickling in, but I can go ahead and start with some of our introduction as people are on their way. So, but you see my eyes moving, I'll just be letting people into the waiting room here. So I'm Danielle Carlson. I'm the Director of Training at LifeWorks Psychotherapy Center. And LifeWorks is the sponsor of the KPACT group. I'm just gonna give a little background on KPACT. So the history of KPACT is we started KPACT in 2014 as a way to connect a community of kink and polyam affirming therapists to a community of referrals and learning. We've hosted learning events and social events along the way. And we try to provide a learning space for clinicians to share ideas and discuss professional and ethical issues related to psychotherapy with kink and polyam identified clients. We host these events usually 3 times a year and sometimes have some other events as well. We also have an online home for therapists to find healthcare, medical, legal, psychotherapeutic, and financial professionals for clients, so to find referrals they're looking for, to share and request relevant resources and to announce position openings, trainings, meetings, and engage with other professionals. So if you want to join that group, it's you can submit our contact form on the KPACT website where you all registered for this, and you can join that group. And it's a really great community of people who are just very busy, lots of resources being shared, lots of referrals. And yeah, so that's KPACT. So, and I just wanted to give anyone who's new to KPACT here. So this format is really for anyone who works with clients and who thinks of themselves as a service provider. So we're going to be framing the work today with Sunny around kind of how you work with your clients. And we just wanted to kind of give that framing. So a little logistics of Zoom before we start. So please mute yourself for the whole training if you're not speaking. If you forget to, I might mute you. So that's no offense. I just will be kind of watching to make sure we don't have too much ambient noise. Please update your name with your correct name and pronouns if you can, so that if you are speaking, we can see what your pronouns are. And if you don't know how to do that, if you go in the top right corner of your little video box, there's little 3 dots there, and you can click rename. If you would like to use the speaker view to see Sunny more clearly, you can. So this is, well, I actually don't know how yours is. Mine is in gallery view right now when you can see all the faces. But if you go up into the top right corner to the view button, you can choose to see kind of everyone, or if you choose speaker view, it will show you who's speaking. So that will be Sunny primarily. And then if anyone else, one of your colleagues is speaking, that will show them as well. So that's an easier way to follow along with the presentation. We'd like to use the hand raise function if you'd like, just because we have a number of people here and a number of pages. I'll be standing and trying to pay attention if someone's trying to get our attention, but sometimes the hand raise function is easier to use. So that's over in the sort of participant chat area over there. And you can, that will give me a little clue that someone's looking to jump in. And let's see. We also use the chat. You can ask questions or connect with colleagues there. So I found that mostly what the chat is useful for is that people put questions in and the presenter can answer them, but also your other colleagues can answer them. There's usually a really lively conversation of colleagues in the chat as well. So please feel free to use that. You can also direct message me if you're looking for something specific or you're having an issue of any kind, technical issue, or something's come up in the presentation and you need some help with something. You can go ahead and direct message me. Again, that's Danielle Carlson. And just as a reminder, you all heard that fun robotic voice. We are recording. So we will be sharing this presentation out with any of the registrants who registered for the event today but couldn't make it. So just keep that in mind. If you would like to talk and not be on camera, feel free to turn your video off. But otherwise, we're just planning on sharing it with people who register for the event. All right. Any other questions around any of those logistical things I just mentioned around Zoom? Okay, if you do have questions, please just chat me. All right, so we're going to get to the main event here. So I'd like to introduce Sunny Megatron, who is our speaker and presenter for today. So I'm going to read a little bio we have for Sunny. Sunny is a sexuality and kink educator and media personality. She's the host and executive producer of the Showtime original television series Sex with Sunny Megatron, plus co-hosts the APACT award-winning American Sex podcast and Open Deeply podcast. Sunny is a certified relationship coach and American College of Sexologists International Certified Sex Educator, plus was voted XBIZ 2021 Sexpert of the Year and Kinkly's Sex Blogging Superhero of 2017. She's been featured by outlets like Cosmo, Playboy, BuzzFeed, and CNN, plus is a contributing editor of XBIZ Premier Magazine and a regular columnist for Sexual Health Magazine. Her first book, Customizable Kink, A Strategic Guide to Erotic Play, will be released in 2022, so keep your eye out for that. In her sellout sex and kink workshop, Sunny's unique brand of, how do you say this word? Edutainment? There we go, edutainment, I got it, okay. Seamlessly combines her humorous lecturing style, interactive exercises, and the latest sexuality research. Sunny's passion is helping people become their authentic sexual selves by learning to overcome shame and shed inhibitions. As a lifestyle BDSM enthusiast, her work focuses on demystifying non-normative sexual practices, amplifying erotic intelligence, and ending stigma. So we are very lucky to have Sunny here. I'm very excited for this presentation. Thank you all for being here. And let's all welcome Sunny. And if you want to go off mute for a little clap, you're welcome. Or you can just do your hands, however you like.
Thank you. Jazz hands. I saw all y'all jazz handing even before your jazz hand prompt. So I thank you for that. I am so happy to be here. I thank KPACT for having me. I'm so passionate about the material that I teach, especially about kink. So yeah, I'm tingling and tickled. I am going to share my screen with you. I have a PowerPoint deck, and you will get a copy of this deck emailed to you. So you know, you don't have to feverishly take as many notes. You'll have the outline. So let me go ahead and share here. Perfect. And let me getting my screens all moved around. So much technology, I swear. All right, here we go. So the psychological appeal of BDSM, one of my most favorite topics. All right, so Danielle did an awesome intro of me, so I don't have to go over this too much. I do a lot of stuff. I won some things. I'm writing a book. No definitive date out there yet. I'm telling myself sometime in 2022, so y'all have to make me stick to that. So we'll see. And basically, this book is it's a BDSM 101 through the lens of the soft skills, the strategic critical thinking. It's something that I teach, that I look out into the world, that I see doesn't really exist in book form. So I'm gonna create it. All right, so what can you expect out of this session? Oh, and I did miss some. I'm gonna tell you about me personally, why I'm into kink. If you don't know me very well, or this is your first time with me, not only do I have all of the accolades and the certified sex educator, I'm also a BDSM practitioner in my personal life. Why I'm so passionate about this. So my identities are, I am queer, I'm consensually non-monogamous, I'm married, I'm a BDSM practitioner, I'm biracial, parent of 2 adult kids, all sorts of things. And kink specifically, my first few years practicing kink, I identified as submissive, and now I mainly consider myself a dominant, and more specifically, a psychological sadist. So today, I am going to be teaching not only from the theoretical and the book smarts place, but also from personal experience as well. All right, now that that's out of the way, what can you expect out of all of this? Well, first and foremost, lots of fun and lighthearted visuals. Why? What's the big deal? Well, one, this is heavy material, and why not make it a little more fun? Two, 2 hours is a long time, and we're on Zoom. We're not in person where I can run around the room and do different things. So I got to keep you engaged somehow. But also, it's a subtle way to chip away at some of the kink stigma that's out there. And what I'm specifically referring to is the notion that kink is all so serious. BDSM is so serious, so serious. And for a surprising number of kinksters, it's actually not very serious at all. In fact, there's a lot of humor and ridiculousness and silly situations that are juxtaposed with very intense themes, especially people who engage in some of the heavier or more extreme or more psychologically based BDSM scenarios. So my goal is, on a subconscious level, you'll carry that lighthearted vibe with you and carry that back to sessions with your clients when you're talking to them about kink. For those of you who are here today that might not be familiar with kink on a personal level, more on a clinical, intellectual, or theoretical level, you might not be privy to how lighthearted some of our very dark explorations actually can be. And, for the clinicians that don't have that kind of lifestyle experience, that right there will help you put your clients more at ease, will help your clients feel more at ease with your understanding, your realistic understanding of kink. So that's a little subtle purpose there with the visuals. But really, what's our goal? What are you going to learn? Well, first, to acquire a deeper understanding of the psychological benefits of these seemingly unpleasant and extreme kinks like humiliation, age play, consensual non-consent, power exchange, edge play. Someone talking, or is that a rogue mic? It's a rogue mic. Okay. And then ways to identify how BDSM stigma and shame keeps kinky clients from accessing their full pleasure potential, their full play potential. On the surface, us kinksters seem like we have it all together and we're really confident in our sexuality, but we get hit with that just as much as the average person out there who's considered quote unquote vanilla. Also, to understand how this type of play, psychological play, or more intense kinks can go wrong and cause harm, whether it's intended or inadvertent, plus explore some tools that can be used to lessen the odds of a negative outcome. You can never guarantee safety. We'll get into that in a minute. Also, to develop a deeper understanding of how structural power and oppression covertly seep into BDSM scenes and dynamics. To recognize how core motivation and intention behind this type of play of the people doing it can impact not only the outcome of whatever scene those people are doing or the dynamic that they're in, but also that participants' well-being overall. And also to learn new language, learn new frameworks that will enable you to talk with your clients in a more disarming and less clinical manner. And that is so important. Some of the things I'm going to go over today might seem to you like they're basic. Okay, I know this. Yeah, you're rehashing what I already know, blah, 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 blah. The purpose might not necessarily be to teach you this thing as if it's brand new to you, but it's to provide you with a reframe that you can use, and new language you can use to engage with clients, explain things to clients, etc. And as I said, you're also going to get a PDF of this presentation, which I don't normally do, but y'all are special. And I really want to help you work with the people that you're working with. I very much do this, what I do in my career. I also consider it not only, does it pay my bills? I consider it an act of service, and I'm doing good in the world. And if by giving you this, I can help you spread that good out to other people, that's awesome. So, all right. I also want to, we're gonna do a lot of reframing in the beginning. When kinks are broken down to their smaller digestible elements, especially the ones that are harder to understand or more extreme, we break them down to their lowest common denominator. And oftentimes you'll find when you break people's really weird kinks or fetishes or down to what they really want, they're the same things that vanilla folks want. They want to be loved. They want to be validated. They want to feel close to their partners. Like it's all the same sorts of motivation when you break it down. And by understanding that, by being able to whittle down to that lowest common denominator, it makes your kinky clients feel less othered. We all have similar wants, needs, insecurities, etc. And another goal is, let's say you encounter a kink that you hadn't heard of, and you're pretty open-minded, but this one's like, oh, you do what now? In the what? It can help you break that down to better understand it and go, oh, I get it. I get where that comes from. So you can take all of these SARS, which is sexual attitude reassessment sessions in the world, but sometimes understanding that on a realistic working level is a very difficult thing to get. So I hope that this will give that to you as well. And also, we can only cover so much in our time together. I'm going to go over, basic kind of generic examples to give you ideas of what we're talking about. I encourage you to always go learn more. There is so much to kink. It's a lifelong journey. So keep doing the work, keep looking at BDSM through a more curious lens. At the end of this presentation that you'll get, I have links to additional resources that you can use. And just logistically here, I encourage you, put on your camera. If something resonates with you, give me some jazz hands or type in the chat. Oh, yeah, okay, that really resonates with me or whatnot. As you said, I will be taking questions. I have time for questions at the end, but feel free. I don't think we have a Q&A enabled here in this particular session, but if you have a question in the chat, perhaps preface it with a uppercase question, first, and then put what your question is. So then when it's Q&A time, Danielle can go through and find that big, capitalized question and easily find the questions for the end of the session. And I am very conversational. I am very casual. I'm going to make jokes and weird analogies. I might even drop a curse word here and there. This is a conversation that is supposed to be disarming and comfortable. And that is my style. As Danielle said, talk amongst yourselves in the chat. If something resonates with you or you want more resources or to talk to other folks, use that as your side conversation. And what else? Oh, I want to give a content note about some of the subject matter that I'm going to talk about. I am going to briefly gloss over themes of sexual assault when I talk about consensual non-consent. I'm going to discuss age play. I am going to briefly touch on controversial kinks like race play or dealing with body shame through humiliation. I'm going to be talking about those on a very, base level theoretical sort of framing. I'm not going to be getting into details on any of those things, but I want to let you know that so you know what to expect. All right. So but it's going to be fun. We're going to start out reframing BDSM. Now, I'm coming into this assuming that y'all have at least some base knowledge about how BDSM works, the very basic 101 level stuff. There's negotiation and safe words and consent and what basic roles or dynamics there are in kink, how to differentiate kink from abuse. And also, this is an important one that a lot of experienced folks kind of gloss over, that not every kinky person is involved with kinky community or wants to be involved with kinky community. A lot of kink education is framed around, well, when you get into the community and you go to your first play party, and there are kinksters of all different flavors. Some are, bedroom only do it at home. So just keep that in mind, not only in this conversation, but when you're working with kinky clients. There are lots of different motivations and different levels, I guess, that people opt into kink. After we reframe our BDSM 101, or reframe our definition of BDSM, just period, we are going to be examining the role of power in kink and how kinksters can intentionally analyze and use power in kink for positive outcomes, for personal growth, for a whole bunch of great things, connection with partners, etc. And we will go over some of those specific play styles I mentioned: erotic humiliation, consensual non-consent, cis men and submission and submissive fantasies, age play and little space, edge play, disgust, fear, extreme sadomasochism, etc. And then we're going to round it out by examining some strategic and customizable approaches to things like negotiation, approaching consent, the debrief after a scene, all of those soft skills that are really important when we're playing with heavier kinks or kinks with a stronger psychological component. All right, so let's reframe BDSM. So you may know BDSM as the standard definition: bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, and sadomasochism, right? But there are some alternate definitions. Think about why we do BDSM, and this is just the basic sort of canned reason. We'll get into some nitty-gritty reasons in a minute, but oftentimes it's compared to the same thrill people get when they ride roller coasters or go see scary movies, that sort of thing. It's that physiological response, the endorphins, the adrenaline, serotonin, dopamine, all of these hormones and neurotransmitters and oxytocin, cortisol, all those things, right? Essentially, we're manipulating our body chemicals to access an often euphoric headspace. It's enjoyable. It's a natural high. We call those things a subspace or dom space for, dominance and submissives. Okay, sure. But let's really dig down to what is it? We've heard the expression, the biggest sexual organ is the brain, right? And that's very true in BDSM. They say it's not about the physical sex. It's more about the brain fuck first and foremost in BDSM. And I'll tell you what I mean by that with an analogy, the first of many wacky analogies. Roller coasters. So let's say I am a BDSM dominant, which happens to be true, and I am negotiating a scene with my submissive. But rather than being in BDSM, I'm actually a roller coaster engineer. And I am going to design a roller coaster, which is my kinky scene, for my rider, which is my submissive. And I first sit down with my rider and I said, well, what do you like in roller coasters? Yeah, okay, cool. You like corkscrew turns. All right. Yeah. And you like the big plunging, whoo, like downhill. Okay. I'll write that down. Okay. What don't you like? You don't like the water splashes. You don't like the dark tunnels. Okay. I've gotten all the specs of what you do and don't like in a roller coaster ride. Now it's my job not just as a roller coaster engineer, but I'm also a roller coaster user experience designer. What does that mean? Well, I don't just know like, okay, the mechanics and engineering of putting together the physical roller coaster. I also know as a user experience designer, oh, how do people feel when they're about to get on the roller coaster? What colors should we make the area where they get on? What kind of aesthetic should we have? What kind of music? When should I put those dips and turns in? Because I know based on, neurology and things I know about, the excitement that roller coaster riders get and their dopamine and all this stuff. I know exactly where to put those things to manipulate that experience mentally for them. So even though a roller coaster is a physical thing, I am manipulating them emotionally, mentally to take them on a ride. And when I'm putting together the physical parts of this roller coaster, I am absolutely going to follow. They told me they like these things, but they do not like those things. I'm not going to deviate from that because that would be breaking consent. But I'm going to arrange those things that I know they like in a way that still feels like a surprise because I want that anticipation. I want them, perhaps at some moments, and this is especially true with kinks that have a heavier psychological component, I want them at certain points in time, maybe to hit that point going, oh, I know, I trust my roller coaster engineer. I know we negotiated, but I don't know what's going on right now. I feel like this roller coaster car might just run off the rails and I might fly across the park. Whoa, right? And then when you pull into the station, because you're safe, you're safe. And you're like, woo, that was a ride. And I make sure I take your hand. I make sure you're gonna feel dizzy when you come out. I help you acclimate back to the real world. So that's a BDSM scene from start to finish, to the aftercare and that aftercare, making sure you're okay. That is what I am doing when I'm creating a BDSM scene for somebody. I can use different tools like, the corkscrew curtains or whatever. In kink, that could be floggers, it could be spanking, it could be tying you up with rope, all sorts of different things based on our negotiation. But those things are my tools to enact this mental, emotional roller coaster or symphony or whatever analogy you like best. And one of those tools is sex. But just like a flogger, I don't have to use it in kink. I can still do a scene without a flogger. I can do a scene without sex. So BDSM inherently is not about sex, first and foremost, as I said. And that also makes it very appealing to people who are on the asexual spectrum. Sex isn't expected. Sex oftentimes does not happen in BDSM. There are people who are allosexuals, which are people who are sexual people, but they say, I like my sex by itself and I like my BDSM by itself, and I don't do them together. So it's an acceptable way to have the connection and the intense sensory and emotional experiences without having to experience sexual contact as well. Now, some of the other, I just made a line on my, I don't know how I did that. I underlined something somehow. Anyway, an alternate definition of kink, couple of them that I really like, is that spells it out a little bit more. Consensual exploration of non-traditional adult play that often includes things like intense sensation, role play, eroticization and subversion of authority and social hierarchies, fetish or atypical sensory stimuli, shifting consciousness, like going into that headspace. Midori, who is a kink educator that I absolutely adore. She's one of the top kink educators in the world. Her definition of kink is one that just sits right in my heart. It is perfect. She says it's childlike play with adult sexual privilege and really cool toys. And I was like, yeah, we tap into that creative headspace when we're in kink. You know, again, especially in some of these more psychologically based kinks that we're talking about today, it's sort of the same vibe as when you were, you know, in 3rd grade on the playground with your friends. And okay, what are you gonna be? All right, I'm gonna be the superhero. You be the supervillain. Okay, I want to do this. And then they're like, no, I don't like that. Well, how about instead I do this? And you're like, yeah, okay, let's play. It's that sort of creative headspace that we're getting at when we are practicing kink or in an active kink scene. And one thing that's important to remember, and I'm going to reiterate this, it's the name of my book, is kink is customizable. Meaning, we learn all these rules about dominants can only act like this and submissives can only act like that. And if you're practicing kink, you have to wear like short little black vinyl skirts and be very serious. And that's not true. That's one archetype. One, you know, like if I said, when you're playing on the playground, you can only be the mom and play house. That's the only thing you can do. I mean, kids' imaginations are endless. So is kink. We see that one archetype because that's sensationalized in the media, but you don't have to look like that, act like that, portray your role play roles like that at all in kink. In fact, I oftentimes dress and do scenes as a clown. I am not kidding. It's a lot of fun. But you can customize your kink to whatever fits your personality or your situation. There is only one across the board, written in stone, cannot deviate from rule in kink, and that is consent. That's one simple word, but it's a lot of complex things. And, you know, in that becomes trust and good communication and, you know, all that stuff. But consent is number one, but even how you go about establishing mutual consent is also customizable. There is no one way to do this. So that's a stigma or a misconception we all need to collectively break, even people who have been kinksters for 20, 30 years. But kink, you know, getting back to the analogy with the roller coaster, oftentimes is mental smoke and mirrors. With some of the extreme, scarier things, we don't really want to actually do those things because they may be dangerous, but we want to play act them. Or we want to hold the threat of doing this scary, horrible thing to somebody over their head and giving them that anticipation, but we're not really going to do it. So kink is a lot of mental smoke and mirrors. It's emotional strategy. And this next visual perfectly displays that. I don't know how I got that. Well, let me get that line off of my, how do I get that off of there? Hold on a second. Did I hit annotate? No, hold on, wait. Did I get rid of it? No, go away. Oh, no. I don't know how I got that line in there. If anyone knows, tell me. Oh, there's 3 dots if you hover over it. Oh, I love the chat. Hold on a second. Upper right-hand corner of your little video picture, there is 3 dots if you hover over it. Oh, that's not for me. Okay. I don't know. I will figure out how to. Oh, the line's gone. I don't know what I did. Magic. Anyway, mental smoke and mirrors. This Alfred Hitchcock quote really sums up what I'm trying to do when I'm practicing kink and what kinksters are trying to do. You know, there is no terror in the bang, only the anticipation of it. We're playing with that anticipation, right? That is where you want to either be or the place you want to bring your partners to when you are practicing a more psychologically based kink scene. All right, so let's get to reasons why we engage in BDSM. So many, so many. And this is only a brief little snapshot to give you some examples. a lot of these things are interrelated with each other. A lot of these things, science just hasn't quite proven yet. The Science of BDSM team out of Northern Illinois University is doing some great work, but they are to the point of scientifically backing up stuff that we already know, like, ooh, there's an altered state of consciousness. Any kinkster would be like, no S, of course there is an altered, but they figured out why, what happens to your cortisol and yada, yada. So we got a ways to go until we can definitively prove some of these things. So these are theories. These are things that some people believe. These are things we can extrapolate from other things. BDSM specifically is, especially the theory behind it or the science behind it, the why, has to be interdisciplinary for a number of reasons. One, we just don't have the research. Two, a lot of the kink specific books and resources and educational materials out there are written from that very stereotypical archetype. I am a BDSM master and I will tell you how to have your slaves kneel at your feet. That is definitely not everybody's jam. So if you are customizing your kink and thinking outside of the box and trying to figure out what works for you, you have to go to other sources, whether that's improv, the improv, yes, and in BDSM, it's yes, and for consent, no, but neuroscience, even dynamic systems theory that's used in engineering, somatic therapy, trauma therapy, even business. My prior career was at an ad agency in Chicago, and I use some of the principles that I from the advertising industry and apply that, overlay it onto kink. So that's a lot of what we need to do and what these theories tap into. So to access a state of play, okay, on the surface, okay, yeah, of course we're playing, but what does that really mean? Kids play, animals play. It has a purpose, and there is a whole discipline, studying the neuroscience of play that's just fascinating. There's a National Institute of Play. A book that I highly recommend is by Dr. Stuart Brown and Christopher Vaughn. It's like Play, How It Shapes the Brain and Invigorates the Soul, or something, just something imagination. So just play, Dr. Stuart Brown, plug it in, it'll pop up. So play is a profound biological process that most complex life forms never stop needing and never stop benefiting from. Not just as, well, of course, little kids play because they're learning how to, be themselves, or little kittens play because when they chase their mama's tail, it's actually teaching them to hunt. So when they're older, they can feed themselves. Sure, it does that, but there are many other reasons why we play. Play involves things like anticipation, surprise, pleasure, understanding, whether it's of yourself or others that you're playing with, strength, and definitely humor. There is a lot of humor in play, and especially in adult erotic play, and for lots of different reasons. One, it's just recreational. Laughing is, laughter really is the best medicine for lots of different reasons. But when we are engaging in some of these really dark kinks that are kind of like effed up, like you do that's your role play scenario, that's a little messed up there. You'll find oftentimes that sometimes the kinksters will break character and start laughing or make a practical joke. I'm a pansexual. I love puns. I will be in the middle of a very intense scene, electrocuting somebody's toes, and then I'll make some kind of pun and we'll just burst out laughing. Why? Humor helps us deal with difficult subjects. It helps us deal when we're in distress. It helps us disarm shame. It can help us forge connections with others when we're laughing together. It helps us relax so we can absorb, so we can process what's happening. And sometimes it just gives us that much needed comedy relief, that comedic break that we need to just kind of take a breath, reacclimate, and get back into electrocuting our toes, right? And play, it does so much. It gives us permission to do things other than what is expected of us. And it gives us permission to do that in a safe container, because it's just play. So maybe we wouldn't take these emotional risks or behavioral risks, or even physical risks in the real world, but I'm just playing. This is just pretend. If it doesn't work out, the consequences aren't going to be that bad. So I'm going to go for it. I'm going to be more uninhibited. So in a scene with very heavy psychological elements, I often call kink, or doing a kink scene, my emotional test kitchen. I can try on different emotions. I can try to exude an attribute that maybe I'm scared of in the real world, like asserting my authority, speaking up for myself. It's hard for me to do, but maybe if I play a character like that in my kinky life, I can kind of try it on for size a little bit. I can get comfortable with it. And maybe I can even take some of that back out into the real world with me, take a piece of that play that I tried out in my emotional test kitchen. I was like, that's pretty good, and take it with me. So, we learn about our strengths and our weaknesses, our negotiating skills, our coping skills, our about our boundaries and how well we can advocate for ourselves. We learn, how to vocalize those things, how to say no, how to be confident in our yeses, maybe how to overcome paralyzing fears. These are just examples. It's endless, but wow. When we think about play, not in the bedroom. I'm one of those geeks. I play Dungeons and Dragons, role-playing games. People do improv for fun, right? Something called LARPing, which is live action role play. All of those things. It's really the same thing as kink. Kink is sometimes called fuck LARPing, live action role play, and I think that's pretty accurate. Play is also the cornerstone of all of our personal relationships, right? It helps us explore emotional intimacy with a partner, and it's most effective when we are doing new forms of play with a partner, something novel, something different. We're covering new ground that can really foster that intimacy and connection. So that's a huge reason right there. We are playing. This is fun, right? And if we like to play serious, that's our personal choice, but it doesn't all have to be serious. And another reason that natural high, the altered state of consciousness that I talked about with all the neurotransmitters, yada, yada, yada. There's also a physiological response to things like fear or humiliation that can be similar to arousal. Your heartbeat goes, you start sweating, et cetera, et cetera. There's one theory that kink can possibly serve as give us somatic healing, basically, to regulate our nervous system. And I'll explain why. If you're familiar with Emily Nagoski, who wrote the book on burnout, that book gets into this a bit. So, the theory is that way long ago, when we were new humans running around hunting and gathering, our stresses were, hey, I'm hunting and gathering. Oh my goodness, there is a tiger that is about to eat me. And then our body kicks into high gear. Our nervous system does its thing. It shuts down the unnecessary stuff. It pumps blood to the places so we can see, so we can run fast, so we can make those snap decisions, so it can save us. And back, early humans, one of two things would happen in that situation. Either we'd become tiger lunch and we wouldn't have to worry about anything ever again and the conversation's over, or we get away and we go on to live another day. And the act of getting away, the act of running it off, the act of getting into this intense, physical and emotional state completes that stress response cycle. So our nervous system can then downregulate and we can be at rest. okay, so now let's translate that to now. We don't have tigers chasing us, but we have student loans, we have COVID, we have our in-laws, we have, 80 gazillion other things, politics, whatever it is. And we don't have that opportunity to run like the Dickens and run away and complete that stress response cycle and calm our nervous system. So Emily Nagoski gives lots of different examples of how we can calm our nervous system and complete that stress response cycle. Could be through, creative hobbies like painting. Some people do exercise, physical activity. Some people mentally engage with creative things. There's all sorts of different ways, but one way we can complete that stress response cycle is with kink. Absolutely. And I asked Emily outright, because I'm like, you don't really get into this, but she's like, oh yeah, definitely. So that's, one theory, one that I think holds a lot of weight. Another theory is it gives us therapeutic exposure or desensitization to things that scare us, that, whatever we have uncomfortable feelings about for one reason or another. Sometimes, it can help people reenact unpleasant things. And when I say reenact, I don't mean like to the T, I mean the flavor of the past disturbing thing. If we're reenacting things to a T, we can really get into major triggery territory, and that's some intense play, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But it can, help us reframe it. Instead of in real life, it ended real bad. In kink, safe container of kink. Oh, not only did I have control over it, but it ended pretty good. So, that's one of the things. Emotional self-analysis, just learning a little bit more about yourself and how you tick in very extreme situations. Also, we tend to fetishize what's taboo, right? We're not supposed to do that. Oh, that's gross. That's dirty. Oh, the butt. Oh, pee. Oh, ah. But then, we suddenly find it really intriguing and sexy. That is absolutely a reason that people do kink. Also, we tend to reenact things from pop culture, things that we grew up with. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and it said that our generation has like some kind of sexy attraction to quicksand. If you're my age, you'll get it. Later generations, I hear a lot about like Disney princesses being trapped, and we reenact that, what we've seen in the movies, popular culture growing up. And also, I want to talk a little bit about neurodivergence and kink. And that's, I guess, I think I skipped that identity. That's one of my identities. I am neurodivergent, and I align very well, neurodivergent folks in general align very well with the framework of kink communication protocols, because there's no guesswork, right? There's very clear communication. We're very specific. There's no guessing. There's no inference. We can also stop and advocate for our needs, and we are encouraged and empowered to do that, even if they're weird, right? And we get praised for that consent culture that kink is a part of. It's like, hey, thank you for looking out for yourself. I know that's weird that you needed to stop because you had a piece of lint in your sock touching your third toe on your left foot, because that's me. I'm not making fun. That is me. But cool. Like, I'm not going to criticize you for it. I get it. Okay, cool. Yeah. And also, as a neurodivergent person, and this is not my area of specialty, it's more my personal area, but I talk with a lot of educators that work with neurodivergent folks. But playing with different emotions has really helped me with interpersonal approaches and relationships, and also relating to masking, right? It can help me mask better, or it can help me remove my mask and figure out who I really am underneath all of these masks. It can help me understand what emotions am I feeling. So that emotional test kitchen part really comes in that respect. And it can also help with decoding emotions and behavioral patterns in other people. So as a neurodivergent person, which is nonverbal learning disorder, which, if you're not familiar, is sort of a mashup of the some characteristics of ADHD, some characteristics of autism spectrum disorder, with a huge dose of not sensory processing, what's the word, of not being able to think of words, spatial awareness, like spatial difficulties thrown in. And as a neurodivergent person, I did not understand the big picture. I did not know how to read people. And I had to, as I navigated people through my 50 years of life, you know, I built a database of, here are different characteristics of people, here are different patterns in their characteristics, etc. Like, I was able to have a really good handle on people's source code, you know, like I know exactly what makes you tick because I see the patterns and everything, and I finally figured it out. That's not cool when I do that to people in my vanilla life. If I'm like, well, really, the reason that you're, you know, mad about this thing is because you need control, you know, we're a lot of mental health professionals here, so I think you get it, right? In kink, I can use that superpower to consensually to burrow into your brain and call you out, and it is like magic. So that's another reason. I want to get back to some of the somatic stuff that a lot of people, I don't think, realize. People with chronic pain, and again, this is all theoretical, this is all like experiential, anecdotal, but there are a lot of people with chronic pain who really enjoy receiving pain and intense sensation via kink. Why? So some of the theories are that, you know, like for instance, person who suffers chronic pain might be like, oh, flog my back. I'm a dominant, but I will get flogged any day. It's like a massage. It feels so good. It loosens up my muscles. Could it be like a fascial massage? Maybe. Could it be doing other, you know, things to my body that my body? Sure, maybe. But also, if you think about the neurology of pain, you know, what fires together, wires together, right? So with chronic pain over time, it changes the way your brain is wired. At least that's what the neurologists tell us, right? That every time you feel pain, the same pathways are stimulated in the brain. And as a result, that just becomes embedded, right? It's like on hyperdrive. Those signals are just, pay attention to the pain, right? And so your nervous system gets oversensitized, and it's awful. You know, I suffer from chronic pain. It is not fun. So one of the theories is, if you overload the brain with an extreme, intense sensation, which is often pain, there are a lot of folks that say that sort of resets those neurological pathways, not permanently, but for a certain amount of time. For instance, I know people that do hook suspensions, which is they put big old hooks in your skin and hang you and swing you around. That's a little too much for me, but I appreciate other people who, you know, your kink is not my kink, but your kink's okay, right? But they've told me that they suffer from chronic pain. When they do a hook suspension, their pain is alleviated for, you know, 6-8 weeks afterwards. Awesome. You know, hopefully one day we'll get to the point of actually proving that through a kink lens. But that's another reason that people might enjoy that sort of thing. And, you know, even some of the latest theories about fibromyalgia, you know, is that caused by a dysregulation that, you know, was caused from or set off from trauma at a previous time? That's one of the theories. So it's like, we're not there yet, but all of this may come together. But the bottom line is, kinky folks seem to know some things that other people don't, whether they realize they know it or not. Like, they are on to something. And the biggest reason we do it is because it feels good, right? There are kinksters out there going, well, I'm going to have you hit me in this way because you're, you know, neurologically rewiring my brain, so my pain stimulant. No, we're just like, it feels good. We don't know why. Oftentimes we don't care. For some people, digging into the why ruins it. Like, I'm not in a science class, I'm doing kink, right? So inherently, on some level, we know this, but we don't know we know it. All right, so there's no universal reason for kinks. And there's the Saturday morning cartoon, you know, we're a product of our pop culture and our generations. Oops, wait, made that go away. Hold on, go back there. When we are working with kinky clients, we have to be mindful not to pathologize kink. And we know that on an intellectual level. Like, of course we wouldn't do that, right? But it's easy to do this subconsciously. And you can come off in that way without intending to at all. And, you know, it could be by trying to dig deep into the why of why a client, you know, likes this or that. For many people, BDSM is an escape. It feels like you're pathologizing it to analyze it, that sort of thing. And these are things, again, that you may know, but these are also, every one of those things you may need to remind clients. They pathologize their own kink. Well, there must be something wrong with me. It must be because I was abused as a kid is why I blah, blah, blah. It must be, blah, 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 right? Oh yeah, there's a common belief that, oh, all of our kinks are our kinks because of trauma. That's not true. Not true at all. Sometimes is that the case? Sure. Sometimes is that not the case? Sure. There's no one reason for kinks. It's very complex why we like what we like. And, you know, the belief that, okay, all of our kinks come from trauma. If you look at it that way, it's like, well, yes and no. I mean, we are kind of a product of all of the things that happen to us, right? Like if we're in the store and someone bumps in front of us and we're like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to let them go ahead. Oh, I wish I had the gonads to just say something and be like, excuse me, but I feel embarrassed, whatever. Okay. Maybe if we look that far back, we can figure out a reason why it's hard for you to assert yourself, right? But that's a vanilla world thing, and that's very acceptable. Do some little things bleed over into our kink and our sex life? Sure, because we're human beings. But it's not this othered thing. You know, you're messed up because you're messed up. So, you know, working with clients, you know, think of that grocery store scenario. If we overanalyze or, you know, dig deep or keep coming back to that one thing in kink, we wouldn't keep coming back to that one thing in the grocery store. Maybe we would as a springboard for a bigger pattern. But oftentimes with kink, we tend to just keep zeroed in, focused on that one thing, instead of looking for the bigger pattern, and that pattern that also bleeds over into your vanilla life. It has nothing to do with kink. It doesn't make kink bad. It doesn't make kink the outlet for your bad thing. And that's what a lot of kinksters internalize. They think that of themselves, even though their logical brain might say, well, no, of course I'm fine. But inside they're like, I'm messed up. There's something wrong with me. So that may have to be a constant reminder and a constant validation. And for some, they do use, they're like, yes, I have trauma and I am using kink to help me work through these feelings or, you know, whatever. Cool, also valid. There are, you know, many different ways, customizable kink, once again. And I always remind those folks, like, hey, you can get into some scary waters. If you're trying to use kink as therapy, it can be therapeutic. It can be healing. It is not therapy. I very much encourage clients to find kink aware therapists, kink knowledgeable therapists. So if something comes up in those scenes, you have a mental health professional to process those heavy things with, and somebody to parse out your strategy about playing with those things to see if it's really healthy or a good idea. So I see, yes, pain with pleasure. I'm just like looking at the way to control your pain. Yay. Oh, thank you for the book. Awesome. Just checking in, seeing how y'all doing. You're all making friends. You're all talking with each other. So these are really important things to understand also for kinksters themselves, because not only is that self-judgment really, often if our partner comes to us, you know, I have this really kind of weird thing that I'm kind of into. We want to make sure that we're open to that partner as well. So there's a lot of judgment in kink, even though we say, you know, collectively as a subculture, we're not judgy. We actually kind of are. So that understanding and suspending judgment, that is a key piece. Because negative emotions in some contexts can really turn us on, and that freaks us out. You know, anxiety, guilt, shame, fear, anger, gross things, disgusting things, right? Those are supposed to be boner killers. Those are not supposed to turn us on. Why in some contexts do they interfere with our arousal? And when I say arousal, it may be sexual arousal. And there are some folks that get a type of erotic arousal out of kink that really has nothing to do with what we traditionally think of as sexually. I refer to it as, you know, when I get really turned on from kink, I'm a person who does not mix my sex life with my kink life. They are separate. Sex life is genital tingles, you know, when you're getting kind of turned on, and getting turned on from kink is brain tingles for me. And it's just as satisfying to go there, but it's not a sexual thing. So when I say arousal or turned on in a kink context, I could mean in a genitals way or in a brain way, and they are both just as valid. Or for some people, it's both at the same time. So when we're aroused, our tolerance for those gross things, painful things, increases, right? We can tolerate, oh, that's a pretty hard pinch or a slap or whatever. But if you did that to me randomly, I'd say, ow. But in the right context, it's, and most of us have been there. You know, I often use the comparison of, it's late night, you're looking at some adult clips on your computer or whatever, and you just go from clip to clip to clip to clip, and it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder. And you know, I say that you've fallen into a late night pornado and you found your way to Strange Boner Town. You're like, I do not know why that turned me on. The next morning you look at your browser history and you're like, what? How was that hot? Oh my God. Like, so that's a very human thing. And that is something that kinksters wrestle with too, even though we try to pretend like we don't. And in order to fully and objectively explore or eroticize or enjoy things like humiliation or some of the edgier, darker, weirder, more psychologically based kinks, we have to suspend that judgment. Yes, self-judgment. And also sexual fantasies are sometimes in direct opposition, sexual and kink fantasies in direct opposition to our vanilla values and beliefs. Like, that is so wrong on multiple, like that. I would never do that in real life. I'm against that. I go to protests against that. Why is it turning me on in a kink context? That's very disconcerting for a lot of people. Melina Williams-Haas, which is another one of my favorite kink educators, who talks a lot about taboos and very edgy emotional psychological play, has a phrase. She said once, the pussy wants what the pussy wants. And it's true. You can't explain it. You can't make yourself feel bad for it. It's just part of human nature that we eroticize some of these things that sometimes seem so wrong, so politically incorrect, so unethical, whatever it is. But again, there can be some benefits to playing with these taboo things in a consensually negotiated, safe container. We can explore them and pick them apart and turn them over and look at them and see how they make us feel. And that has benefit. Whether kinksters playing that way actually realize that's what they're doing, or they're just like, I don't know, I like it, I'm not sure why. That's some of what's at play under the surface. So yeah, all this to help your clients not have shame about wanting to play with their shame or weird stuff. It's very important to cultivate that safe environment for anybody involved. So let's play with some power. I got the power. I like that little guy. So what's on the screen here are sort of the, I guess, stereotypes that most of us with a very base level of knowledge of kink know. Oh yeah. You know, people do kink because it's like a mental vacation, right? They can check out, or they can think about something else. It's escapism. Yeah. Also, people do kink because sometimes when let's say it's in a scenario where they're made to do something, you know, consensually, it gives them permission to do something sexually that they really want to do, but they're afraid to ask for, right? And these are the canned answers that we hear. And also the ideas that are perpetuated around pop culture, that sort of thing. I'm not saying they're not true, but they're a little shallow. We'll get more into that in a minute. Another belief is, oh yeah, people who are sadomasochists, they're wired differently, and pain feels like pleasure to them. They enjoy the pain. Or the sadist, they get off on cruelty, right? It's sexually invigorating to be mean to somebody. Or that it's sexually invigorating or mentally invigorating to be in control, to have power, to be the authority over people, or maybe to protect people, to be the strong one. And I'm not saying, I'm using the voice that makes me sound like I'm sort of making fun. Those are valid ways to play with power, valid benefits of playing with power, but it very much just scratches the surface. There's a lot more, and it's a lot more nuanced for a lot of people. So let's go beyond the stereotypes. In kink, we are perverting social norms and hierarchies for pleasure. I'm going to say that again because I'm going to put on some t-shirts, because that's what I do. I pervert social norms and hierarchies for pleasure. And when I say pleasure, it could be in my pants or under my hat, right? We are subverting our societal expectations, what we're supposed to do. Maybe those things that we're supposed to do have caused us a lifetime of feeling shame or anxiety or just like disdain, like, I don't want to be that because of my gender or my role in society or what people think I am. They expect me to be that. No, that's not me, right? Playing with power can help us learn about other people, can help us learn about ourselves. It can help us learn and parse out how the system works. The bigger societal system, and also the systems within those systems and whatnot. There's a lot there. You know, I have patriarchal systems are a big one with gender, with, you know, expectations, maybe as a parent, as a mom, these are your expectations. And that also bleeds into race and classism and, you know, any ism you can think of, systemic oppression. And this sounds like so unsexy and so heavy. And a lot of kinksters are like, whoa, I don't want to bring systemic oppression into my kink. That's not sexy. But again, it's that covert, it's what we're doing under the surface that we may not always realize we're doing. It's sort of like when your computer is like, oh yeah, we're updating this program, but you can keep working. It'll just, you know, update in the background. It's kind of, we're updating in the background. We're learning things about these bigger, important systems and how we relate to them without realizing that's what's happening. When you are practicing kink and you are the person with more privilege, or the more privilege you have, the more analysis you need to do about what exactly you're doing, especially if you're playing with like things that in the real world might be like unethical or, you know, steeped in toxic masculinity, that sort of thing. Yes, you're playing with them in the safe container, but analyze, like, why are you doing that? What's happening under the surface? What is your motivation? And you have more responsibility to then look after the best interests of the people that you're playing with that maybe don't have as much privilege as you. And there's that hidden power dynamic there. So the more privilege you have, the more work you have to do. In the most visible kink subculture, which is technically like the queer, pansexual, kind of all-inclusive kink subculture, maybe not one of the most visible, the gay male kink subculture is also very visible. But really that more, you know, all encompassing subculture is really pretty cishet. Like, we're steeped in cishet norms. It's, you know, men are dominant, women are submissive, even though, yes, there are dominant women in there, but that underlying theme is still very cishet norms. So cis white men, they're the obvious example. Cis white dominant men are going to be my obvious example because they are at the top of the privilege or oppression ladder, right? So let's use that as an example. But of course, we need to remember, for other folks, you know, privilege is intersectional. You may have privilege in one respect over somebody you're playing with, and not in other respects. So that's some of that nuance there. But let's say you were a cishet white dom, and you are acting dominant. You know, you play with women, you're acting dominant because you're just steeping yourself in more toxic masculinity, those really unhealthy gender norms. Maybe you feel masculine and powerful when you abuse, you know, even though you're consensually play acting, and it's not really abuse if it's consensual. You feel like you're abusing, right? Or you are wrapping yourself up in those very like narcissistic, abusive tendencies that we tend to couple with that toxic masculine archetype. And you're praised for it. And you're like, cool, kind of like I can act like an asshole. And then I get a blowjob, you know? And you just leave it there. You got some work to do. You got some work to do. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this to be an asshole and not be called out on it and then get a blowjob? Or are you doing this for other reasons? What is your goal and intention behind what you're doing? Because you can still on the surface look like you know, in a consensual safe container, look like you are play acting an abusive household that gets a blowjob at the end. But maybe internally, you're getting things out there or getting things from that are helpful for you. So that's the accountability that I'm talking about, the why behind why your clients are doing the things they're doing is important. But then there's that sort of paradox, because oftentimes, you know, some people really get off on like, I want to know why, I want to analyze myself, this is really interesting. And other people are like, no, I do not want to know why. So to balance that is an interesting dance to get there. We talk a lot just in general, you know, kink education about the benefits that submissives get out of kink. And we often skip over the benefits that dominants get, because it's not just all, I'm being a toxic man, or, you know, whatever. First of all, you can be a dominant of any gender. You can be a dominant of any character or role type. You can be a soft, cute little kitten, or, you know, a little who's coloring in their coloring book and still be dominant. Like, again, customizable. You can do it however you want, but some of those things might be subversion. You know, me as someone who was assigned female at birth and socialized as a girl and woman, when I'm dominant, that's a subversion. Brain tingles. I am getting to access power, that I do not have the privilege or the entitlement to access in the default world. And that is just, you know, some people are dominant for the service aspect of it. There are the people pleasers. They are the givers. They want to make you happy, even though they might look bad doing it, right? You can access some of your tender, vulnerable attributes through dominance. You can build better relationships with trust, you know, whether that's just your relationship with trust in general or your partner and trust specifically. It can be healing. It can be an outlet for creativity. It can be an outlet for flow. Often the altered state of consciousness that DOMs go through is called DOM space. It's really the state of flow where you're like on your game, you know, at peak performance, time falls away, everything's boom, 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 like you are in the zone. And that state of flow can be mentally beneficial, emotionally beneficial for us. So there's lots of things that dominance also get out of playing with kink. So let's specifically get into using different power types in kink. How can we do that? There's positive or empowering power and negative or oppressive power and positive power. And I'm going to frame these in a way that can be used out in the default world or in like kink play. And when I say kink play, I am referring to people, some people only do kink on a scene basis, like we have a certain time that we play and that's it. And some people have 24/7 dynamics that they have with their partners. So anything I'm talking about can be applied to on a scene basis or a dynamic basis with maybe just a little retrofitting, but they pretty much overlay. So positive power can be like using your privilege or your power to prevent others from being harmed, to lift them up, help them improve themselves, to give people equitable access to resources in kink. That would be equitable access to pleasure and joy, right? Using your power to empower another person. It has a vibe of like inclusivity and sharing and connectedness, almost like an equitable redistribution of the power that you have. You're not like hoarding all your power. So, you know, we can think about how that power might show up in the real world. And then, you know, think about how this kind of power can be incorporated in scenes, in actions, maybe in 24/7 dynamics, in the methods that not only dominants use, but submissives can also wield this power. You know, in a power exchange or an authority transfer, it's not necessarily that the submissive loses all their power and the dominant takes it. It is an agreed upon parsing out of who can use what power, when, and how. So I'm pulling an example out of thin air, 24/7 dynamic that maybe a submissive is you know, they run the house, they help keep their dominant schedule together, they make sure everything's like boom, 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 boom. If you were to see them in action, you'd be like, they're pretty take charge. Are they a dominant? No, they're a submissive. They are very much into organizing and helping their dominant, you know, organize. Then they can wield that power in certain negotiated ways as well. So negative power. It sucks in the real world, but in the safe container of kink, it can be done ethically and with consent, it can be used for good. So this is like has an imperialism conqueror sort of vibe, like it's all my power and I'm hoarding it and you can't have it. Destructive, oppressive, patriarchal, you know, that it's whatever's done is for the dominant's gain at the detriment of the subordinate or the submissive. You are taking their power, like a power vampire, to give yourself more power, demand respect, entitlement, privilege, all those things, taking all the pie for yourself, right? And on the surface, it can appear to, and in the real world it does, oppress humanity. It can, it can appear abusive. In the real world it is. But like, let's see how we can use that, because they can both lead to a positive outcome. So let's have a little time where we break in. Let me see. Let me look at my time here. Hold on. Actually, I'm going to keep rolling through. I'm going to answer this because I don't want to. I want to get to all the things. So, when we think about kink stigma and the assumptions that people have about kink, the incorrect assumptions, we're usually basing it on all of the power use in kink is that negative power. It's mean, it's brooding, it's oppressive, it's abusive. Not necessarily. There's a whole other side to it. So if we look at an example, human furniture, that's when like, you there, my submissive, you're my footstool. Be quiet. I don't want to hear your mouth. You are an object. You have no humanity. Kneel on the floor and put my feet on you. Okay, so is that positive or negative power? Could be either, depending on how I go about it. So saying, you're worthless, you're just a footstool, shut the hell up, get on the floor, let me put my feet on you. That's that negative, like oppressive power. I don't care about empowering you. A positive power could be, you are my precious footstool that has been handed down generation to generation to generation. It is a memento. I take good care. I polish the little wood every day. It is my prized possession. I take such good care of it. Right? It's not that rah. Another example could be in caregiver little dynamics or daddy dom little girl dynamics. It can be, you think of the stereotypical dad. No, you're grounded. I'm taking all the furniture out of your room and I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'll give you something to cry about, right? Or it could be like, hey, I know you did this bad thing, but let's talk about it. Why did you do that? Gentle parenting that my goal is to nurture and help you learn and grow from this. And that can absolutely translate into kink dynamics. And they can each be empowering. Again, kink is customizable. Somebody might really want to feel or to wield that oppressive, right? In that safe container. Because then when we come out of it, it's like, whew, that was scary. That was good. I enjoyed that. Wow, you made me cry. Wow, I was really scared. I didn't know what was going to happen there, right? Because that is either just fun, or maybe there is a deeper reason why we like that. Humiliation play is one of the most misunderstood kinks. People think it's like, I'm going to call you the worst thing ever. I'm going to make you cry. I'm going to rock your core as a human being and make you feel worthless. It can take on so many different flavors. It can be playful. It can be, oh, put on this cute little outfit and shake your butt around for me. And like, I'm kind of embarrassed, but it's kind of fun. There's a whole spectrum of humiliation. And when I teach a humiliation class, it goes from embarrassment to like down to dehumanization. But bottom line, humiliation is very subjective based on that person's individual perceptions, their belief systems, et cetera, their personal experiences. And we're also perverting social norms and hierarchies for pleasure, absolutely, when we're playing with humiliation. So, we can go from that embarrassment, like I said, it's more of a giggle, you're sort of embarrassed, your cheeks turn a little red, but you're kind of all laughing together, right? And that laughing together builds a camaraderie, sort of like, oh, I've been there too, or I can empathize with what you're going through. Then we move on to guilt. Guilt is more of, it doesn't rock your world when you feel guilty, but it's like, oh, I feed my dog every morning at 8 o'clock in the morning and it is 11 and I forgot to feed my dog. I feel guilty. Okay, that's going to help me remember to do it next time, sort of thing. So, people can wield or use that emotion of guilt in their scenes. And what somebody finds falls in the guilt bucket, falls in the, embarrassment bucket, whatever, is very individual and based on that person. Then we have humiliation, which sort of looks like shame. We're working up to shame. It can feel kind of like, oof, oh, those are insults, or those are, oh, I'm like more than embarrassed, right? But the core difference with humiliation is, it doesn't affect your value as a human being. It doesn't mean if you did something bad, you are not a bad person at your core all the time. And sometimes humiliation, something that falls into that bucket for somebody, can be empowering, because in the back of your head, if someone's like, you're a stinky little pig, or, whatever it is, if you're really not that, your head's going, no, I'm not. And if you have that kind of dynamic where you can brat back, you can actually say, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, you can't call me that. It feels good to defend yourself, right? So it's sort of a subconscious affirmation. But when we get to shame, things kind of get a little serious, but perhaps good. Shame's primary function is to regulate those social norms and hierarchies. It's to keep you in your place. Think of purity culture. Think of anything our society shames us for. Oh, the women, the way we look, the way we don't look, we dress this way, we don't dress that way, too much makeup, not enough makeup, right? We are being kept in a box. And it is a tool of weapon. It is a tool of oppression, absolutely. And shame plays a significant role in our lives. It, is a major contributor in shaping our psyches. Y'all know this, you're mental health professionals. It diminishes our self-perceived value. It warps our reality, and can prevent us from that growth. It just shuts us down. But how can we play with shame in a way that's positive? This is not everybody's cup of tea. A lot of people are like, no, hard limit, I cannot go there. But there's some people that love to play with shame. And I'll give you a theoretical example. Let's say I have body shame. I don't like my weight. I don't like, my boobs are too saggy, whatever. My nose is funny. And it's bothered me all my life, but I'm at the point, I'm body positive. Like, I belong to body positive Facebook groups. I go to the protests. I wear the crop tops. Like, I do all that, but still I have some bad days. I have some bad days where I look in the mirror. It's like, you're ugly, you're fat, your boobs are saggy, your nose is funny, whatever. And I push it away. I'm like, no, I'm body positive. I know that doesn't matter. I know, but that little voice. So let's say I have my partner humiliate me and say all the things that I self-talk myself. Your boobs are too saggy, your nose is funny, you're fat, you're this, you're that. And I cry. I mean, it's in that moment, it's like, But one, I might be hearing those things that I normally, like, they get into my brain and I push them away. I'm confronting those things. I'm really like turning them over and looking and really like just processing those things that I think about myself. I know that my partner doesn't think this about me. They love me and we have negotiated this, and they are doing this because I asked them to help me with something, to give me something that I need, even though it looks really awful on the surface. I also know that at the end, I'm going to be loved. That partner is going to love me. They're going to give me aftercare and they're going to tell me what I need. Like, of course, I don't think those things about you. I said the things we negotiated that you wanted me to say. You're beautiful, right? I mean, whatever else happens that, makes me feel better. And again, that can rewire those pathways, right? Get me out of that place of that self-talk and just be like, you know what, that self-talk doesn't bother me anymore. So that's just one small example of how somebody might be able or might work with shame. But again, it takes a lot of negotiation, a lot of work. And that's where, you're using kink therapeutically, you're skirting on, am I trying to use kink as therapy? Things can go off the rails. So that's something to be mindful of. Consensual non-consent. We think of this, all over the internet, it's called rape play. And that is not the only thing it is. Consensual non-consent is any type of play where you say no. Okay, you're going to eat your carrots that I made for you, submissive. No, I don't want to eat them. That's consensual non-consent. Very benign. We do it all the time. That's why we have safe words, because when we can't trust our no to actually mean no, we have safe words. Consensual non-consent has been made to be this like very like, oh my God, you're reenacting rape. Do some people do that? Yes. Is that valid for them? Yes. But it's not the only way to do consensual non-consent. But just want to make sure that my internet did like reconnecting. Oh, okay. When we're playing that way, the heavier consensual non-consent, reenacting assault, that sort of thing, you know, what are some of those reasons behind it? One, it can be very psychologically risky, but you know, it's some of the same things that we had said before. They're kind of the canned stereotypes, but they're true. You know, being forced is easier than admitting what we want. Why? You know, because our gender, if we're a woman, you know, gender expectations, we're not supposed to ask for that. We're sluts if we ask for that. All those things, right? The slut shaming, that can come into play. It could be just the rush. It could be, removes pressure to perform. You know, again, me as a woman, I'm always doing stuff for people. I feel guilty just laying back and letting myself relax. It could be that. You know, it could be mirroring what we see in pop culture. It could be reclaiming power in response to a past trauma. There's all sorts of different reasons. But I have a little caveat I want to note that your kinky clients are going through about misinformation. It is rampant on the internet. It is very hard to get good kink education. The reason people think consensual non-consent is the same thing as rape play only and always is because of the internet. And these are just a few clips of, you know, some of the things we see on Psychology Today has said, well, that's when you have no safe word. No, that's assault. Like, know that when kinksters are out there trying to get information, there's not good information out there. A lot of it is misleading. A lot of the misleading things come from within the kink community. We have our own misinformation and our own myths and our own misunderstandings, and we perpetuate that not only in our community, but out to the world. And even though not all of your clients are going to belong to community, community is important because it influences what's on the internet, what the vibe of, you know, the current kink subculture is. So the influence of that community will reach every kinky person, whether they belong to community or not. So know that, and know that a lot of, you know, legitimate kink educators will not teach really edgy kinks online unless it's behind a paywall, etc., because they get misappropriated, misunderstood, used carelessly, used to abuse, etc. So edge play, fear, disgust, extreme sadomasochism. What's all that about? It's actually pretty interesting because vanilla people are like, ew, why do you do all that weird stuff? Ew, you pee on each other? Ah, it's like you watch Dr. Pimple Popper, okay? You know, Fear Factor, escape rooms, really bad practical jokes, bungee jumping, roller coasters, polar bear plunge, ghost pepper challenges, like, yeah, so they call this benign masochism, and humans do it. They seek out extreme physical or emotional situations because it's fun. You know, it could be fun because part of the theory is because our body is reacting, having the whole chemical, you know, cocktail going on, which is giving us that high, but we know we're safe. That's exactly what's happening in kink. It's the same. The vanillas have found out. Well, they've always been doing it, but they have a name for it now. They know they're doing it. And, you know, back to the misconception about masochists and BDSM. Oh, they like pain because either, you know, it gets rewired and felt as pleasure, or because they have high pain thresholds, or because they enjoy receiving that pain. That's not necessarily true. For some people it is. Some people who are masochists hate receiving the pain, but they're doing it for other reasons. Maybe this reason, like, I know I can get through it. or I like the after effects, the chemical cocktail, or I want to challenge myself. Look at these people who do the triathlons and stuff, you know, like I want to see what I can get through. I want to challenge myself and feel strong by being broken. So there's lots of different reasons people can be masochists, many of which have nothing to do with enjoying pain. They hate it just as much as the next person does, but they like the after effects of the pain or the side effects of the pain. Oh, cis men and submission, specifically I want to talk about, because that's where a lot of the gender stuff, the, patriarchy, basically, patriarchy hurts men different ways than it hurts women, toxic masculinity, and all of these expectations of what a man is supposed to do. Man, you can't cry, you can't be soft, you can't be. So although that is not every reason, every cis man who's submissive is really working out, blah, blah, blah. No, there's all sorts of different reasons. Is that an undercurrent? Probably for most folks, whether they realize it or not, probably, no scientific proof, but if I was betting in Vegas, I'd be like, probably, yeah. Submissive men get a bad rap, they're, the misogyny seeps in, they're sissies, they're weak, they're, also, they're not manly. And they get a bad rep, outside of scenes, but in scenes, they might want to reenact some of that, forced by. Well, maybe they want to experiment a little, but don't feel that they can. Small penis humiliation, that is something that cis men are always like, how big, how big, how big, how big? Well, you know what? What if I just say it's tiny? What if I just get made fun of and they say it's tiny? I just face that humiliation that I feel anyway, even though, like, studies say half of the men who are into small penis humiliation, like cis men who are into small penis humiliation, half of them have average or above average size penises. It has nothing to do with penis size. It's, the mental, the self-talk. Everything from you're just being used for your money. All you're good for is your money. I'm putting you in chastity because all you think about is sex because you're just a man. Sometimes it's just confronting that stuff or being allowed to be something other than masculine and being loved for it. Age, play, and little space. Same sort of thing, it's that permission to explore, to embrace vulnerability, freedom from adulting, right? It's an escape. It's a return to innocence. You can be selfish. You get to ask for things and try on different parts of yourself that don't get to come out. All sorts of different reasons, but that's another one that is so satisfying for a lot of people. And some people say, well, it shares, psychologically, it's similar to pet play, like you're escaping, if you say that to someone who considers themselves like a little or a middle or an age player, they'll be like, no, we're totally different. Even though on a theoretical level, we're like, but we can see how it's the same. They're very, they defend their culture and their identity as a little, or someone who is a puppy or a pony so even though in a professional level, we're like very similar headspace, they get really kind of insulted bringing that up. Not all of them, but it tends to happen, just as a heads up. But yeah, not knowing the why is okay. And that's for the kinksters practicing. Of course, you may be looking a little into it. And for some, they love, yes, I want to know what makes me tick. Oh, this is so fascinating. Oh my God, this relates back to this, blah, 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 blah. There's no one right way to be kinky. There's no one right way to analyze or not analyze your kinks. Again, it's all customizable. And I love Bruce Lee's quote, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is essentially your own. That's really what kink is. And let's talk about mitigating a little bit. Some of the things that your clients might use, because some of this play is risky. And a lot of kinksters and a lot of people who know about kink are under the false impression, well, if you use safe words, you negotiate, you do your yes, no, maybe, let's blah, 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 you're safe. There is no safe in kink. There is always safer. And I love this Swiss cheese model, which that's taken from the aviation industry. The Swiss cheese model of accident causation, which fits really well in kink. Also, I've seen it floating around for like COVID protocols. This slice of cheese is your mask and that's your vaccine. And, so basically, it's like, let's do a scene. Our first slice of cheese is our first safety measure. We negotiated. We're on the same page. Cool. Our second slice of cheese. Okay. You're going to tie me up. You have the rope education. You know what you're doing. I've even taken a little education so I can be a second pair of eyes and, know if something's wrong. So we're good there. Second layer of safety. Third layer of safety. We got our safe words already. I've even got a little squeaky ball. So if I got a gag in my mouth and I can't talk, I can still signal. We're good. And then we got safety items. We've got safety shears. We cut the ropes off. We have a trigger plan. If something goes emotionally wrong, we can go into like trigger mode and we're good. And then we do our scene and boom, we have these Swiss cheese holes. We don't realize, oop, there's something we forgot to negotiate in the negotiation that's going to trip us up later. And the education and skill maybe it isn't going to help with that. And oops, I was so triggered, I couldn't safe word. So went through the whole of that Swiss cheese too. And if I was emotionally triggered and I couldn't safe word, safety items aren't going to help me. Trigger plan's not going to help me because if I haven't told you I'm triggered because I can't safe word because I am completely freaked out, that's a problem. And we have an accident. Our scene did not go well. And that could be, there could be a physical injury, an emotional trigger, a consent violation, some unexpected thing, just to be a scene that fell flat. That is going to happen to every single kinkster. And they need to be prepared for that. And they need to be prepared to layer those Swiss cheese layers of safety. The more cheese, the better your odds of something not going wrong. However, you cannot guarantee your scenes will go well, your dynamics will go well every single time. And that's something important for everybody to know. Yeah, so every kinkster is going to make mistakes. And the more psychologically heavy the play, the more your potential for making mistakes. And if it's a physical mistake, we can see the bruises. We can see, your toes like this because you broke your toe or something. We might not see the emotional bruises right away. We may feel some kind of way, but we don't know what. It may take us weeks to figure it out. It can get really, really messy. So that's why all of these Swiss cheese slices are so important. And also those soft skills, those transferable skills are important too. The communication skills, the active listening, pretty much all of the things that people go to therapy to get better at, right? We really need those in psychological play, especially empathy, emotional literacy, all of those things. So that is key. And those skills can be built outside of kink because they're transferable, right? They can be learned for the vanilla world, brought into kink. They can be learned from kink and then brought out into the vanilla world as well. And I have a acronym that goes beyond consent and negotiation. Establish consent, fries. Planned Parenthood tells us fries, and we negotiate. We do a yes, no, maybe list. We talk about our safe words. But sometimes there are things that affect our consent that we don't see, that are under the surface. It may be within ourselves. We have a hard time boundary setting. We can't recognize how we're feeling when we're posed with a question. So I have this little acronym for people to self-analyze to see, like, am I negotiating from a neutral spot? And am I seeing any of the undercurrents maybe that are hidden, that are at play here? And just as a reiteration, let's say someone who's dominant and submissive are negotiating. When they're in their negotiation phase, they are out of their roles. They have full autonomy. They have to advocate for themselves, right? So they're in that mode. So the power imbalance, oftentimes we may have power over someone we don't see, that intersectionality. We don't think they see us here, but they do. And that could be affecting the way that they're agreeing or not agreeing to some of the things we're asking. It can affect us personally if we see that person as somebody of authority or somebody that we admire. So that is one, absolutely. Agency. What factors are going on that are keeping you from accessing your full agency? Are you distorting your ability to do that? Maybe because you've been invalidated in the past, you've been told no so many times, you just didn't bother asking. Or when you didn't agree to something, you got steamrolled over and gaslit anyway. So you're just kind of agreeing with stuff without realizing you're doing that. You're trying to think with your head and not with your feelings, and accessing what you feel. Social conditioning, self-doubt, all sorts of things can play into that. Safety and trust. How much do you trust your partner? What is not just your logic telling you, but what's your gut telling you? What are your feelings? What's somatically going on in your body when you're negotiating? Know that if you're feeling like, I'm feeling a red flag, I don't feel good about this and I don't know why, you don't have to know why. And these are all things that clients need to remind themselves of when they're negotiating these really tricky, potentially, go off the rails, could be dangerous scenes. How simple things, how satisfied are you with their level of skill or education and whatever you're doing? Do you know enough about that to properly assess what flags are there? Red flags that you are ignoring? Which ones are they? That sort of thing. Support is, can you be a support for the other person in their consent decisions? Can you thank them thanks for saying no and sticking up for yourself? Thank you for that, for laying down your boundaries. Can you get rejected and not take it personally, or can that other person do it? Those are things we need to examine. And then your motivation, get back to that. Why are you doing this? Why are you playing with this thing that's questionable in the default world? Are you doing this to mutually co-create an experience based on the desire of you and your partner? Or are you just like, I want this thing and I want to figure out how I can get the thing, and you're not thinking about the other person? Also think about, how do you want to feel during your play? What emotions do you want to access? What states of consciousness do you want to access? How do you want to feel afterwards? All of those things. Why are you doing this? That's all important. So let's get to the takeaways. We'll wrap this up and do some questions. All of this to let you see the real inner workings of some of the psychological components of kink, not how they are in a textbook, but how they may play out in your clients' lives. So some of the things to remember, BDSM can be positive. It can be a path to self-discovery. It can be a path to growth. It can be amazing. Also, it can be harmful. It can be misunderstood. It can be accidentally misused. It could be purposely abused. And, everything I talked about today is under the assumption that anyone they're playing ethically and they do not have ulterior motives. Add ulterior motives, we have a whole different conversation. Know that the accurate educational resources are really hard to come by, that kinksters still have internalized stigma, even though they say they don't or act like they don't, they do. That co-creation of pleasure and mutual empowerment is really a key. If you're in this to just, what can I get out of it? What can I take from you? Your client is, that's, could be a potential red flag there. And these soft skills, these strategic skills are non-negotiable for this kind of play. You need to have good skills, and know that kinksters don't always know the why behind why they love what they do, and they don't always want to know. With your clients, encourage that interdisciplinary approach, those transferable skills. They can, apply what they learn in kink to other places, or apply real world stuff to kink, and it oftentimes fits. And know that there are lots of nuances and obstacles that they can encounter that may affect their kink experiences. yeah, that may be hidden to them that need to be parsed out. So I got some additional resources for you. You're getting this deck, so I'm not going to go through each one, but I have like a free negotiation mini workbook. You're free to give that to clients or check it out yourself. Recorded class on humiliation. One thing I want to point out is mailing list. I am doing a whole series of general public classes, starting from BDSM 101, going through to like the intermediate and advanced stuff. I'll probably start that in November and do it every week or so. I also have the link to Kink Academy online video library for learning kink if your clients are having a hard time figuring out where to get good information. It's awesome. And also an American Sex Podcast episode about taboo play with Melina Williams that may be helpful and pertain to our conversation. And wrapping it up, here's all the places you can find me. You're going to have it in your deck, so I'm not going to repeat it. But I hope, if you're new to me, let's connect, let's be friends, let's follow each other on social media. I very much appreciate it. And that's it. I'm going to unshare my screen. Let's do some questions.
All right, I've got 3 main questions here, Sunny, that I think out of interest of time, I'm just going to read to you. So the first one was from Cindy. Cindy says, relief of pain from extreme sensations reminds me of the research being done on cold water swimming as a treatment for depression. Something about the chemicals that the body releases in response to repeated exposure to extreme cold alleviates depression. It's not an immediate effect though, and I wonder if some BDSM kinks require repeated experience to feel optimal relief from certain experiences.
Yeah, I mean, all experiences are different. So some people, yes, absolutely. They repeat the experience, and it's very individual. It depends on what is the experience. What are you doing? What are you trying to solve? But oftentimes, yes, it's not that we do this thing one time and it's done. For me, flogging, if I could get flogged every day. But yeah, I'm not familiar with that research, but I just jotted it down. But I think we're onto something. I think we're going to get to a place, scientifically, where all of this coalesces together and we're able to connect the pieces that we think connect with some real proof.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Steph Fowler. Thoughts on how to approach scene design or deciding whether to engage in BDSM when someone doesn't know what things they don't like? I'm thinking particularly of people with chronic conditions or trauma who end up pretty detached and dissociated from their bodies, but are wanting to re-engage in considering BDSM play.
Yeah, I am an advocate of going very slow. Not only with the negotiation and the self-discovery piece, like parsing out what am I open to, what am I not open to, and that negotiation workbook will help with that. But also going slow in terms of, once I've done all the self-thinking and the negotiation, not just jumping into a full-fledged scene, play with stuff a little bit, whether it's with a partner you're going to eventually engage in a full-fledged scene with, or I am an advocate of platonic kink. I have a friend that comes over, like she's, hey, I'm not very good at flogging. I want to practice. Ooh, I love it. It feels like a massage. Flog me a little bit. Let's see what it feels like. Let's try it. That sort of show and tell, play, experimental sort of vibe that doesn't have to be in a scene can be really telling to just give you a little taste, the little sampler platter of what things might feel like or be like once you get into a larger scene, and may help you avoid some things that if you can tell even on their lightest, you're like, maybe this isn't all I thought it was going to be.
Great. We have a question from Natalie Hawk. She says, maybe part of boundaries, etc. How much do you need to have affection, specific positive regard, respect for each other in quote unquote real life outside the kink experience / sex?
The beginning of that last sentence, I kind of didn't hear what you said. Can you just read like the last sentence again?
It's kind of all one sentence, but I think the
Okay.
basic question is, how much do you need to have affection, specific positive regard, or respect for each other in quote unquote real life outside the kink experience for it to be a good experience, I guess is the question.
Yeah. Again, that's something that's subjective, but if I were to kind of, play averages, Quite a bit. I mean, there is, you know, when there's a kink scene, we have afterwards like the aftercare. The scene is over, we're acclimating back to real life. There's oftentimes a lot of reassurance that needs to happen, a lot of I care about you, I love you, I am, you know, either validating you, making you feel okay. And I'm not just talking for the submissive, for the dominant, for anybody in any sort of power exchange. That can be really important in a you know, ideal world. If I were to say this is exactly how you should be in your relationship, yeah, that needs to happen. Does it happen as much as it should? No. Does it cause problems with, you know, long-term relationships, let's say, that also have a kink dynamic in them? Yes, I would speculate absolutely. You know, because there has to be that removal of, especially if you're doing a scene where, you know, you are being a mean person to me, or you're being somebody that I'm not used to, or we're playing with fear or something unpleasant. I need to know, like, you know, the gate has come down, it is over, we are out of that. And I need to know you don't really think those things, feel those things, etc.
All right, great. We just have 5 more minutes. Does anyone else have a question they didn't get to put in the chat yet, or they want to just jump in real quick? I think there's probably time for one more question here if someone has something.
Just looking at the chat real quick.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Sunny, I hope you're noticing all these great comments we're getting and people really appreciating your presentation here and your answers.
Awesome. Just looking over. Yay. Yeah. You know, questions, feedback, anything. You just have a thing.
It looks like we have one more question here.
Oh, okay,
Sunny.
cool.
Andy says, can you give another example of humiliation play that isn't mean?
Absolutely. Okay, let me think here. I will do one of the examples that I gave was, okay, here's an example, and it shows the subjectivity of it too. Water sports, piss play, right? Let's say I am urinating on my submissive. That is subjective. A lot of people might say, that's horrible. Oh, who wants to be peed on? Oh, gross. That is humiliating. That is mean. That is awful. However, it's not the act that necessarily is mean. It is how the people using that act view it. So for instance, let's say I have a dominant that's peeing on me. Instead of going, oh my God, this is gross. Oh, man, I gotta take a shower. I'm freaking out. I might be like, wow, that dominant, they're like, I'm their property. They've peed on me. They've marked me. I am theirs. This is amazing. And I'm really into sensation play, and it's warm and it's wet and I love it. So that's an example of not mean at all. You know, depending on how it's received. You can also do something very light and fun. It could be, I'm gonna make one of my pictures. There was one of the early pictures, the guys with the horse head that was in the car. I have those horse head and squirrel and all different masks in my kink kit. And it's, you know, okay, now you're a horse. And it's silly. It's like, it's almost like improv. Like I throw a horse mask at you and be like, you're a horse and you are, you know, galloping down the hallway, but you're also in a musical. So you have to sing about how you're galloping down the hallway on your way to get spanked. And they're like, are you kidding me? And then, you know, they're dancing and singing, kind of red cheeked. We are all laughing our asses off, not really at them. Like we're all laughing with each other. It's ridiculous improv in the midst of you may be sing-song galloping your way down the hallway to be tied down and have your ass beat black and blue. So that could be an example. It's really there's limitless options, but it can be fun and lighthearted as well.
All right, awesome. I think just because of time, I think I'm going to end questions there. But thank you so much, Sunny, for answering those questions and for your whole presentation. I just want to give a few closing remarks. So first off, yeah, big thanks to you, Sunny. And I also wanted to throw a shout out to Anna at Lifers for connecting us with you and bringing this fabulous presentation to KPACT. So thank you for that, Anna. I also just want to say, stay tuned for KPACT 2022. We'll be having an event in the spring sometime. That'll be our next event. Also, for those of you who paid for CEUs, we will be sending out the survey link for the survey form to fill out. And actually, I'm going to put it in the chat too. So here it is to fill out. So here it is in the chat. I'm also going to send it out to everyone tonight. And then, as everyone knows, we were recording tonight, so I will send out Sunny's PDF as well as the recording of this sometime next week once I can get it downloaded and everything. And I think that's all my main points. So if everyone whoever's still here, want to just come off mute, I'd just like to do it at the end and just give Sunny an actual round of applause since she had to speak to us in a vacuum all this whole time.
Thank you,
Sunny.
Yeah, and I really hope you're catching all these lovely comments here. And everyone,
I am. I was going to ask, like, can you send me I don't know. I'll try to
put
read
it out
them.
in a card for you. And
I don't know, like maybe like I'm feeling down, I'll just read them.
Yeah, exactly. I think I might get a transcript as the host. I'll look into it. But thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for supporting KPACT and for being part of this community. We really appreciate it and taking some time on Friday evening. If you have questions about anything tonight or you have other questions, please email me. You should have my email address or reach out to the KPACT website.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm just sitting here reading the chat.